So today what we're going to do is we're going to create a preset that's trying to get that Ritchie Blackmore tone. This is something that a couple people have requested in the comments of some of my recent videos. And so I figured I'd give it a shot. I will say the one thing that's difficult about Ritchie Blackmore's tone is its simplicity. He's not using a lot of effects. He's not using a lot of different amps. It's really just him and his guitar, maybe a treble booster and into an amp. So the hard thing about that simplicity is it puts way more of the tone aspects into his hands and his guitar. And none of us have his guitar, and not many of us can play like him. So I'm going to do my best here to mimic the tone, but keep that in mind. It's always going to come down to what guitar you're using and how you put your hands on the strings. So having said that, what I've done here is attempt to mimic a few options for getting that tone. And some of it I took from kind of his progression through his gear. So he started out with AC30s, with treble boosters, and then he shifted into using Marshall amps. Although there were some questions about he was using Marshalls, but he was using like an AC30s, a preamp into the Marshalls. There's a lot of stuff about that. But we're going to do our best here to kind of mimic some of these tones. And let's go through what I got. So on the front end, we've got a tape delay here, and I'm not using this as a delay. I'm using this just to try to color the tone with the drive. So one of the things with the Quad Cortex, when you compare it to something like a Fractal, is there's not a dedicated drive that mimics kind of a tape delay drive sound. So what we have to do here is basically turn on the tape delay, and you can see I've cranked the delay time down as far as it'll go, 7 milliseconds. The wow is off, the flutter's off. I pushed the drive 100%. The low pass, which usually defaults to 3000, I put it all the way up. I don't want to cut too much top end off of this because Ritchie Blackmore's tone has a lot of that kind of top end sparkle to it. And the mix is at 50%. It'd be nice to be able to drive the mix up a little bit to get more of this drive sound, but if we drive the mix up, then we're getting more of the delay, so I didn't want to do that. So we've just got it at 50%. And I think it does an okay job of kind of coloring the tone in the way a tape delay would. After that, I've got kind of three distinct amp options. So one is I've got a AC30 here, and I'm using the top boost. I'm cranking the volume. I'm cranking the treble and cutting the tone just a little bit, keeping the boost on cool though. And then in front of that, we'll have this neural capture of a treble booster. And then the second setup I have is actually using a capture I created, which is, I'm using an LPD87, which is kind of a Marshall in the box pedal, and I created this capture, and I did a video on the pedal. I'll put the link to it here. But it's, like I said, it's a Marshall in the box. It's not necessarily the right era of Marshall for Ritchie Blackmore, but it kind of gives you that Marshall top end to it. I think a little bit more than some of the Marshall models do. So I used it here, and I ran it into a Plexi 100 watt normal model. Gain's not all the way up. I'm cutting a lot of bass, so we're trying to push the treble in this to get that Ritchie Blackmore tone. And then the last kind of setup I'm using is a Plexi 100 Bright. And this is, I think, more classic to the way he was running his Marshalls. Generally, going into the Bright channel, all the settings are about 12 o'clock. I did push the gain a little bit. And this is just kind of straight ahead Marshall Plexi Bright sound. In terms of cabinets, I do have a cab for the AC30 that's a AC30 cab. And we're also going to play with playing the AC30 through the 4x12 cab, which is the other one that I have here. So this is a IR loader. I'm using these Marshall IRs that are part of the free IRs from Amalgam. Again, if you download this preset, you'll get these IRs, but you can also go to the Amalgam website and download these for free. So thank you to Amalgam for making those available. And then on the back end, I've got a little bit of tape delay, this time 4 delay. And I've got a little bit of ambience. So not a lot of kind of ambient effects on the back. You know, Blackmore's tone didn't have a lot of effects on it, but I wanted something there. So let's first start off by saying I'm playing a 3-signal coil guitar here. It's a Schecter actually that I've modified to be very Strat-like. So we're going to use that today for our tones. And I'm going to go through the tones kind of chronologically in terms of, I think, what he was using, so to speak. So we're going to start with the AC30s, and then we're going to go from there. So the first scene I have here is this scene I'm just calling AC30, which is really just the AC30 by itself. I'm not putting the treble booster on it yet. And so I don't think this is necessarily getting you all the way to that Blackmore tone, but it's kind of forming the foundation of it. go to the neck pickup. And on the bridge, it's got a nice amount of bite to it. But then we add in the treble boost, and you really get some bite. So I think that's kind of a good approximation of that kind of Blackmore sound. I'm not a big fan of the cab that's here, so one of the things I did was I took it and I ran that same AC30 setup through the 4x12 IRs, and that sounds like this. So you get a little more of that kind of top end to it. Here's the neck pickup. So I think that sounds pretty good. I enjoy it with the 4x12 more so than the 2x12, but I wanted to include both just for, say, accuracy's sake. So if we switch then to the combination of the LPD87 with the Marshall on the normal channel, again, we've got this EQ to really kind of push the treble on this normal because it is a very dark sounding amp. But the LPD on the front is giving a lot of that kind of top end bite to it. So it sounds like this. So I like that a lot. I think it, again, you're getting that kind of Blackmore, Marshall-y kind of sound. You can even hit that with a treble booster. It's a little much for my tastes, but it's not too bad. And then lastly, we've got this Marshall that's on the bright channel. And this is pretty basic, but it's giving you that kind of Blackmore kind of thing. And then you can hit that with a treble booster as well. Especially nice on the neck pickup. So like I said, simple, straight ahead. It's a lot of it's in the guitar, it's in your hands, but I think some of these tones and the setup is going to get you into that Blackmore kind of realm and play around with it and find kind of what you like and what works for you. It was interesting for me because one of my early influences, and still an influence, is a guy named Rick Emmett, who was a band called Triumph. And he's the one that I kind of cut my teeth on in terms of not just playing rock guitar, but he does like fingerstyle and jazz and blues and all kinds of different styles. And I know one of his key influences was Ritchie Blackmore. And it was interesting for me as I was going through kind of looking at some of these tones. There's a lot of aspects to Blackmore's tone that actually I was very familiar with because they kind of merged into Rick Emmett's tone. And I could hear the influence as I was kind of diving further into Blackmore and his sound. So that was kind of interesting for me. And I think you'll probably hear Blackmore's influence on a lot of the other guitarists that we listen to and follow. So like I said, this will be available on my Cortex Cloud account, and you can download it and play with it. And I hope you found this interesting, and thanks for watching.